Welcome to another installment of Between Two Speakers, where we're sitting down with the creative minds behind theatrical advertising to gain some insight on their creative process as it relates to music and sound design. I'm Mike Zarin. I'm a composer, producer, and all sorts of things. I'm very excited about today's guest, Patricio Hoter, who is the creative director and editor at Bond Theatrical Advertising. This is special to me because Patricio really is one of these editors who excels tremendously well in the genre of horror. And he's a very thoughtful yet abstract-minded person who approaches it in a very smart way. For me, it's a great opportunity to speak with him because when it comes to composing, the horror genre is my personal favorite. Patricio, thank you for being here. Can you please tell us what you think it takes to make a good horror trailer?
It needs to be unique. Like you had to keep an eye on what's current and what's vogue, right? When we were working on Split back in the day, or like right at the same time that Mother came out, like it was all about clocks. It was sort of like stemming out of the 50s horror era. In the case of now, for example, like when you know what's in vogue, the concept of uniqueness is how do you break that? So Third Day was a great example because Third Day was a piece of music that was so abstract. It was purely vocal based. And then we worked on that piece and we sort of built into it. And next thing we know, as we finished the teaser and then we finished the trailer, all stemming out of the same sort of DNA, we have library cues, like music libraries that are actually starting to reference that to create, okay, the next round of our next album is based off of the Third Day. And it's like, then you realize that you found what's called unique, so yeah. That's where we draw the line. It's like, how do we offset what's currently in vogue to create something that is so unexpected that we put it in vogue?
And what do you think is in vogue right now?
Well, right now, I think we can see a huge shift into classical, right? Like, I mean, and that has been going on for a while. Like, classical orchestral has become like, the way to translate elegance into anything. So whenever they tell you, like, we wanted to feel big, we wanted to feel elegant, what used to be very dramatic Transformers now got abandoned for big classical pieces reimagined. Classical is great, for all of his Dark Materials campaigns. I've done like the teaser, the trailer, the TV campaign, the teaser for second season, teaser, trailer, TV campaign. And that's something that we went full classical from the very beginning. And when it came down to the first campaign, for example, I was like, I think that we can do an orchestral piece. I think it's the footage, when you look at it, is beautiful. It's all in Oxford. It's like, you want it almost is begging that it's classical, but I can't. And I started with Murph and I said, look, I'm like, we can't just do classical. It has to be, once again, unique. So the question is like, what is that unique element? And one of the things that we were going through, a piece came up that was classical, but it had a violin that played and played until it suddenly, like, it was so supernatural, the speed in which it was playing, that became the signature of the campaign.
Yeah.
So every single piece that we used thereafter for his Dark Materials had a very speed up violin that just, like, it almost felt like you could see the person playing and breaking every single string, and then it was like, okay, well, great. Now we know what the bass is. How do we evolve? How do we grab what we know works and not plateau there, but instead take it next level? So then the trailer came, and when the trailer came, it's like, okay, great. Let's have that element that is successful, and let's inject their vocals. But let's find like the right vocals. So then we started, like, we found a different piece. We incorporated through rework a different track of like violins and strings that were going so batshit crazy that you could not even like follow it. And then when the big peak moment happened, big vocals. Like, I want like a big like woman's voice cutting through. That was complete success. Then we go to the second season, right? And it's like, we know what works, right? What's the next evolution of that? So that's how we keep sort of like crafting season after season, like that sort of fresh feel on something that feels on one hand familiar, but it also takes you out of what's expected and puts you in a new sort of level.
I love that imagery of the violinist like breaking through or breaking the instrument. It's great. It's visceral. It's unique. I love that. That was very insightful. I appreciate that. What do you feel the trailer audience is like today? How has it changed since trailer audiences of the past?
When you're putting together a piece, right? Like there's the concept of attention and the span of attention, and each year it gets shorter and shorter, right? Like that's what bumpers are for. They were created out of a need to keep people invested in the first 6 seconds to buy into the next piece that's going to be 2 minutes and a half, right? No one likes bumpers, but they were meant for a reason. You know that the beginning of any given piece is very important. It's very important because if you're going to be watching it on YouTube, it had to capture your attention. If you're going to be watching a TV spot on TV, you need to be able, the rule of thumb is that whatever you were watching before, when it ends, the person watching is probably going to stand up and go to the kitchen and grab a beer. What I need to do within the first second or two is stop you from doing that. A lot of times when you look at like TV spots or stuff like that, it's no wonder that they all start with like a big loud bang or like something that immediately captures you, because that's the goal. So the beginning is a hook. The end has to be bigger than life. That it needs to be open ended, because if you give the sense of closure, then you basically created a summary of a film and not a trailer. That everything has to have a purpose. You have a thin line between art and marketing. So while it has to be artful, it has to have purpose. And every shot that you do something has to be handpicked for a reason. To create something unique, to reinvent yourself, comes down to like the question of like, what can I do that it will be so insane and so weird and so unique and so unexpected that you would put everything down and be like, I need to watch this. Give me like 2 seconds. That is the question. If I can do that, that is how I will always start. Rules are very important. I think they give you the education that you need to be able to go from like cutting something because it's an art piece to cutting something because it has a purpose for marketing. I think that's absolutely key. If you know how to break the rules, you're going to find the gold that is basically underneath them.
What's an example of a trailer where you broke the rules and it took it to the next level?
Back when I was at Ant Farm, I put together the teaser for the Blair Witch.
Wow, Blair Witch, classic.
And that was interesting because we had a movie that was done with found footage on something that at the time, the concept of found footage, while it's very successful, many people seem to be turned off by it. So when you're putting it in terms of marketing, you could choose different paths. One path would be to commit 100% to doing something with found footage. The other path is to commit to hiding as much as you can because perhaps people don't want to see it. Or in the case of this particular teaser that actually went the distance, it was about doing a combination of the best parts of the found footage that looked less like found footage and a lot of stock videos that give you a sense of scope. When we paired that visually with the classic hunting female song, right? Every breath you take, we came up with a piece that was very unexpected for what you would have expected from the Blair Witch. The idea of doing the reinterpretation of Every Breath You Take by someone that could sing it, came more from the thought of like, okay, hold on. What if the sort of concept of this teaser is that there's a girl in the middle of the woods that is by herself singing, right? And that's what we basically like. I went over to Simone, who at the time was like running the music department there. We had Taylor, who basically was our cue sheet girl at the time, but she had an amazing voice. And I pitched them this idea, and they were like, "Yeah, let's do it here. We have all the tools to do it." So we recorded her, and then instead of like, "Oh, let's put like music and orchestra or whatever you want to have it," it was more about like, "Let's put sounds of the woods." So then it will really truly feel like there's a girl walking down the woods singing by herself. And then you have this big scopy shots of like the woods, and then you have this turn into darkness, and then the wind picks up, and then the soundbed is composed of purely wind building, and the song is being sang, and it created a sense of unexpected chaos and also terror.
What an interesting way to build both the environment and a feeling in order to convey what you need to. That's really cool, man. Or I should say, even invent an environment to create a feeling. That's great. Very cool. When it comes to trailers these days, do you find yourself utilizing bespoke services, or otherwise known as custom music?
Yeah, I would say that pretty much there was a time very early in my career where, you would pull something like a piece of library cue, you would use that and then close the book and you're done. And I think that era, at least personally, has gone for me. Like now we're in a place where I would say 99% of the times we work on pieces that always go back to composers, and we reinterpret, what, how I like to say it, right? We give it the DNA of what we needed it intended for. A lot of times you even reimagine the piece by means of having the stems. You get to reimagine it in different ways, right? So like the sound is there, the DNA of the piece is there, but the order of how everything plays with each other is not. And then once you have that skeleton, you can go back to the composer and be like, well, look, this is what we put together with the tools that you gave us. Now we need to inject the DNA that's missing so that this is unique for the property that we're working on.
Very cool. I find myself with little to say after you are speaking because I feel as though I'm back in my student seat listening and learning. This has been an incredibly insightful conversation, and I'm incredibly appreciative of you sitting down with us and talking about your process and really showing some insight into how you look at everything. You've been doing this for so long. We've been working together for so long that we oddly never had the opportunity to sit down and talk about this, but I guess we work on our own silos and don't often do this. So thank you, Patricio, for joining us, and thank everybody, all of you, for listening to this installment of Between Two Speakers with Patricio Hoter. I am Mike Zarin, composer, producer, and founder of Sense It, where we specialize in all things music and sound design for theatrical advertising. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, whatever it is that you're doing, and we'll talk to you next time.